Hi guys, welcome to the last lesson for the term. Congratulations, you've made it. So this is the last lesson that's going to wrap up what we've been doing in our unit for medical science. So I'm going to take you all the way back to cells and one of our first intro lessons towards the start of the term. So you might have this picture or table in your book on the left. So you've probably got some type of record of this. What we're really going to focus on is this area called the cell. So we've been spending most of our time up at the organ, tissue, organ systems and organisms. So we've been focusing on the organism of a human or Homo sapien, and we've really looked at all the different organ systems so far, except for two, which we'll focus on in year 9 and 10. So we've looked at the respiratory, the circulatory or cardiovascular. We've looked at the musculoskeletal system, the digestive system, the excretory systems, which includes the urinary system, and also just last lesson we did the reproductive system. So hopefully you're aware of all the different organs that are found within those systems. We've also done some different case studies and looked at a bit of microscopic images for the different tissues. So now we're kind of switching back and going to look back at cells. Now, just a reminder, we did do plant and animal cells in a bit of detail. So once again, we're focusing on the animal cell because this is what's in humans. And we actually have a lot of different types of animal cells. So in a human, we have different types of cells. So we've got nervous cells, blood cells, bone cells, fat cells, muscle cells, immune cells, epithelial, which is a fancy name for skin. We've also actually got liver cells, lung cells, heart cells. They're all specific cells that come together to make a tissue, that come together to make an organ, and that organ performs a specific function. Now, the ones that we're going to be paying most attention to today are the sex cells. Okay, and that's because we're going to be looking at different types of cell division. So the sex cells, which are your sperm and egg cells, are made up through the process of meiosis, and that is going to be one of our types of cell division. So today we're going to be learning about the two types of cell division and how one of them produces sex cells and how the other type actually allows some of these cells over here to copy themselves. So cell division is exactly what it sounds like, and it's a cell dividing. So we're going to look today at the two ways that one cell can split into two cells, or sometimes even 4 cells. So just briefly looking back at the two main learning intentions. So our first learning intention for this unit was we are learning to explain that multicellular organisms contain systems of organs that carry out specialized functions that enable them to survive and reproduce. So we had a look at all of these different body systems. We've learned a lot about the different organs in those systems and also the role or function of those systems. For example, the digestive system role is to break down nutrients and provide the body with energy, whereas the musculoskeletal system, the job of that system is to protect, support the body, and allow us to move. So having a good idea of all those different body systems and the different organs within them will help you, master or understand the first learning intention. We've done the second learning intention in bits and pieces throughout. We had a little bit at the start of the term looking at plant and animal cells, learning that cells are the basic units of living things. And we looked at the structure of cells. So all the different organelles, things like nucleus, mitochondria, vacuoles, cell membranes, and what all of those parts do. So now we're going to be looking at the function of cells, specifically looking at body cells versus sex cells. And I guess the easiest way to remember this is if it's not a sperm and an egg, it's a body cell. So looking at cell division and the two types of cells, body cells and sex cells, we have two types of cell division, and that is mitosis and meiosis. So there's a couple of differences between this. They do go into a lot of detail. We're going to really focus on the basics. If you want to take some time to pause now and read through these paragraphs, I'm going to go through and explain the differences in a summary table. So what I want you to do now, guys, if you haven't already, is pause the video and we're going to write this down in our notebooks. So your heading should be mitosis and meiosis. If you would like to do a split page, you might like to do mitosis on the left in your book and meiosis on the right. It's always really good when we're doing a comparison in science to be able to have our dot points on each side and then our pictures that compare the difference. So I'm going to do my best today to explain these differences to you. The main thing that I want you to focus on is their role. So what is their purpose? And the purpose of mitosis is growth and repair. The purpose of meiosis is reproduction. The rest of these down here we will revisit when we get into year 9 and 10, but the basic understanding today is that mitosis and meiosis are types of cell division, and mitosis, the purpose is to grow and repair your body or those cells, and meiosis, the purpose is to produce the sex cells so that that organism can reproduce. So having a look at these pictures on the right hand side here, we've got what's called the parent cell, which is just the cell as it starts off before it's divided. So you'll notice, if we're doing a bit of a spot the difference between the left and the right hand side, or the mitosis and the meiosis, that the mitosis side, that's my emails, that the mitosis side only ends up with 2 cells in the end, and we call those daughter cells. So mitosis ends up with 2 cells. So looking at our table, the number of cell divisions, you'll notice that this table says 1, and that is just showing you that one cell has split once into 2 cells. Now, if we're comparing that with meiosis, where it has 2, we've got 1 cell division here, but then we've also got a second cell division where both of those cells split again. Now, there is a lot of detail that we could go into here about the DNA and the genes that are found in these cells, and the reason why there's a second cell division for meiosis. But the most basic way for me to explain it is that if these cells down here are going to end up as sperm or egg cells, they need to have half the number of chromosomes in them. So some of you might have heard of chromosomes before. They're the components that hold DNA. So when a baby is made, you've got sperm and an egg that come together in fertilization. We learned that last lesson. Now, a sperm has 23 chromosomes and an egg has 23 chromosomes. When these two come together through fertilization, that's going to make one full cell of 46 chromosomes. And that little cell will eventually end up planting on the uterus, and then that will grow and divide to eventually create a baby. So I'll go into that detail in a little bit more, in a little bit later, but essentially meiosis, the purpose of it is to divide the cells so that they end up with half the number of DNA, or half the amount of DNA, and those cells that result are sperm or egg cells. Now, it's occurring in the sex cells, so it's making sperm and egg, but what's actually happening is that the location of this is in the testes and the ovaries. So that's where those cells are coming from. There. And you'll also be able to pinpoint the idea that if the cells that are made are different, so each of these cells is different to the parent cell, because this parent cell has the full amount of chromosomes, and each of these cells only have 23. Don't get too wrapped up in that if it's a little bit confusing and you're not really understanding that part of it, that's the deeper level connection. So we can go into that a bit more detail in year 9 and 10. For now, I just want you to be able to understand that meiosis, the purpose is for reproduction, and mitosis is for growth and repair. So going back to mitosis, why do cells need to grow and repair? So you think about once that baby's in place, you look at yourself now, you've definitely grown from when you were a baby. So all of your cells, your skin cells, your heart cells, your lung cells, your liver cells, they have actually copied themselves or divided themselves so that they look, there's more of them, all right? So that growth is referring to the fact that your bone cells and all of your body cells have grown to increase you from the size of a tiny little baby into the adolescent that you are now. Looking at the repair, that's coming into line with what you would do if you had to, sorry, my cat just jumped up on me. Repair, if you fell over and you injured yourself, you scratched your arm, scratched your knee, bumped your toe, your skin cells would get a wound. You need to be able to repair those cells. So your skin cells actually go through mitosis, and then that cut heals. So if you've bumped yourself recently, you can have a little look at your immune system response there and think, mitosis is actually happening on me right now. There's lots of different ways to represent mitosis and meiosis. If you haven't already, I would pause back on the previous screen, maybe go back and re-listen to my explanation, and make sure you're noting down that table of differences. This diagram here just represents another visual to show the difference between mitosis and meiosis. So again, you'll see that there's only one cell division and that these two cells here both have 2N, which is just a numerical way of saying it's got the same amount as the parent cell. So 2N and 2N, it's a full set of DNA. It's identical to the one that it divided from. Whereas in meiosis, you'll notice that these daughter cells here only have N. So it goes from being 2N to N, which is half the amount of DNA. And these 4 here would become the eggs or the sperm cells to allow for reproduction. So just to recap, meiosis is for reproduction. So the ovaries in a female will produce an egg through meiosis, and the testes in the male will produce sperm through the cell division of meiosis. In fertilization, the egg and the sperm come together. Now, once that one cell comes together into a whole parent cell, it then needs to multiply and develop into a baby. So what happens there is the infant is going to cell divide. That one cell is going to cell divide through mitosis. So you're going to get lots and lots of different examples of a full set of cells, and then those cells eventually specialize into what ends up being our body cells. So these 40 numbers, a little 46s, will end up turning into heart, lungs, liver, eye, all the different cells that will contribute to the tissues that bring into a baby. Once that infant is born, their body cells will also go through mitosis until they've developed into an adult. We also go through mitosis as well when we do our repairing of cells that's required, and any other growth as well. So things like hair cells and stuff like that. So making sure that you've got your notes down for today, your task is to create a visual representation or some type of summary showing us the difference between mitosis and meiosis. So it's probably taken you about 20 to 30 minutes at least to watch this video, and especially if you've paused and taken some notes in your book. So what I want you to do for the rest of today's lesson is follow one of these projects, and I want you to create an example using this to show the difference between mitosis and meiosis. So use that table that we got you to copy down in your books before to help guide your examples. If you want to check in with your teacher about different options, you might like to create an infographic or create something like I've just done there as a video lesson. Have fun and have a beautiful holiday.